What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the next episode of the Legacy Liftoff podcast by DroneAdair. I'm your host, Cody Relic. I appreciate everyone coming back. Season 2. This is our first episode in season 2. Very excited. We have some awesome guests in store here coming up. And especially today, Trevor Call is with us, founder of Call to Fly, a cinematic FPV course. Trevor, I really appreciate you being here today with me.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks, Cody. Appreciate you and having me on, and just super excited to have a little chat today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Trevor, man, we met. We'll never officially have met, but we've been talking for almost a little over a year now.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of your work throughout the last few years, and just kind of kept in touch. I know we've spoke about the course in lengths throughout the last year. Very excited for you. We'll kind of dive into that course a little bit later on in the podcast, but I want to kind of just start at the beginning, because everyone in this industry, that's why I do this, is because has such a unique story, and it doesn't even necessarily uh mean that it's done and finished, right? Everyone's building a legacy their own way, and that's what I love about this industry, and that's why I have guests on like yourself, because you didn't start this until like a few years back, right? Like, you were never like, hey, I want to be an FPV pilot, I want to do this, right? Like, you were working in a completely different industry, different space, weren't even flying before that, right? So it's like
Yeah.
it is a I just love hearing people's stories, and that's kind of where I always like to start, is what were you doing before this phase of your life when you were in the drone industry?
Yeah, good question. Because a lot of the drone pilots that I hang out with and fly with were like, "Oh, I had my first drone when I was 5," and or like I picked it up like in my teens when I was in high school, and I was just like, "Dude, I picked it up like th 2 years ago, 3 years ago." Like I never even did anything in the creative industry until 2020. Like I took one photography class before that in high school, and other than that, like I was going to school to be an accountant. Like that's what my dad wanted, and I was just trying to figure out what I wanted. Um, to skip a little of this story and just focus on the FPV side of things, I was living in Utah, doing content creation. So I dropped out of school, pursued video, was doing content, and in Utah, like everybody around you just does it. If you go to a location, there's like 30 photographers, always weddings going on, and I don't know, I just felt kind of claustrophobic in that space of just feeling like everyone else. And when I started seeing FPV around, and it piqued my interest, and I was like, okay, this is something I can do to differentiate myself and bring something to the creative industry in Utah that not a lot of people do. There was only a handful of pilots at the time. So I just translated all of my video and filmmaking knowledge into the drone world. And that's how I got into it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think it's just a cool thing too, right? It's like you see it and it's like, hey, it's cool, but like, now how do I really take this and dive all in, right? And
Right.
to make this jump. Is that something you did right away? Did you just say, hey, I'm working on content creation for this outdoors company, I believe it was in Utah. It's
Mhm.
like, all right, did you just make that leap right away, or did you transition into it, or what was kind of, once you came to that realization, what was like your next step to make this happen?
It was a bit gradual. I didn't really know how to get into it. That was my first like conflict. It was still earlier on in the FPV world, and there wasn't as much like informational content on it. And so I was just trying to figure out like where to even start. And I found the first step is literally just get a controller and then go into the simulator. So I practiced for like 3 months just with a controller. Didn't even buy a drone yet. And it was actually at that same time that the DJI FPV drone came out. And so I was like, it must be a sign. I'm just gonna get this one, and like it's the
Play
easiest
around.
one to get into. Yeah. So um I dove into it then. That was like my first step was during that launch of the DJI FPV.
Okay, nice. Yeah, and did you like start going after clients right away? Did you start flying for fun? Obviously practicing, once you were out of the simulator, like,
Mm,
I don't know because everybody has a different background. Like you came from the content creation, but
yeah,
like creating a business, right? And then creating content and knowing how to monetize it and sell it and everything else are two completely different things in a lot of different ways. Sometimes
yep,
people struggle with that aspect. And I don't think you have because you've done it, now you've been able, and maybe you have in the beginning, right? Of
yeah.
course. But kind of like what was your goals right away where you just say like, hey, I'm going to pay for the drone with a job? Did you go out and start reaching out to people, or how did that first client come about?
So you touched on this earlier, but I was working with an outdoor company called Mountain Ops, and I was just doing their videography and photography, and we had a small team of us. And I just bought the drone because it interested me. Like it moved me more than any other video style at the time. And so my plan was just like have a drone, get up and just fly and just experience it. I didn't really have like an end goal of I want to make shit tons of money out of FPV. It was just I wanted to experience flying. Um, and so when I actually left that job and went full-time freelance, I kind of put FPV to the side. I started to just pursue like website videos and ads and social media content. Um, and I pursued that for probably 6 months until I started working with Landon By the Way,
Mm,
who is he's now the owner of Full Time Filmmaker, but he wasn't in Full Time Filmmaker at the time. And I just started on his production company doing the same thing, just video, photo. And he was actually the one that was like, maybe you should niche down and just do FPV. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to just do one thing. I want to do it all. And during that time, I was like, you know what, fine. Like I'll try it. Like I'll just do a 30-day challenge of FPV. And that's when everything popped off. And like I started to gain a following, and I was like, oh shit, okay, I can actually like
it's
focus
happening.
on, yeah, it's
Yeah.
happening. I can just do FPV. And so um since then I've just been doing FPV, and I'll do other video and photo jobs on the or editing on the side. But yeah, that was my first like leap into the FPV world.
Nice. That's awesome. Congrats. I mean, I think
Thanks,
that's
man.
the biggest thing is taking that leap. It's like, hey,
Yeah,
it's awesome that Landon pushed you to like, try that and believe in yourself that you can actually do that because, you know, you need that trust of like in yourself to say, all right, I can
yeah,
do this. But also like if someone else is telling you that maybe it is something I need to do, right? That reassurance of, all
yeah,
right, yeah, I'm gonna go for it, right? But and back to the services, I mean, you said, you still do other things. I think that's just an important lesson of like, even though you niche down and you do something very specific, like to make a full-time living and career, like you do have to kind of, make that happen sometimes, right? And
yeah,
especially in the beginning, right? You have to kind of make things happen with either editing or other services that you might have, right? Whether it's photography or social, whatever you're doing, like you mentioned before. But once it pops off, right, you can kind of take a step back, hopefully, from all that
yep,
stuff, and you really make a killing at it, which is great, and obviously the end goal.
yeah.
What was your first? I'm always curious too, of like, because the FPV community might come after you if you're saying you're still flying the DJI FPV. So what was the next? I know you're not. Maybe you are still flying it, but like for work and whatever. What was your first drone after that?
Yeah, it's funny. Even when I got the DJI FPV, there was a lot of controversy behind it, and I was like, I don't know, it was just the easiest one that
Yeah,
got me up there, you know? Um,
it's a
but
great way to
I,
learn and start. I mean, yeah, it's like
exactly.
the batteries, everything else, right? There's a
Yep.
ton of stuff that you need to know with it. So it's a great. I always say that too. It's a great practice start. Get the controls and go from there. right?
Yeah, like the safety precautions inside of it was good until it was more limiting than helpful, you know? And I talk about this in my course, like it's okay if you go that route first and then you want to make the jump because that's when it gets really exciting. I actually got the ProTech 35 as my first drone. So that's a Cinewhoop. It has prop guards. Um, I always recommend a Cinewhoop off the off the rip for people to
Yep.
just practice because it has those prop guards and saves you a lot of the time. Um, and I, is that what you got behind there?
I got a Shen drones there, a little squirt,
Okay,
but yeah,
nice.
great way to start for sure.
Yeah, and to preface, I will say that I did not love the ProTech 35, so don't buy that one. In my course, I recommend the Cinelog 35. I feel like it has a lot more maneuverability. Um, but even that one, I just felt like, okay, the Cineloop is cool and it's a good practice, but now I want to actually like do the flips and dive mountains. And so I got a 5-inch, the Nazgul Evoke from iFlight.
Nice. And you still have
Yeah.
that today? You're still repping that around today? Is
Uh,
is
I
that a
I have that one. It's actually it's funny in the background of my course. It's the one that has a broken arm that hangs over the edge of um the shelf.
nice?
So that one isn't in commission anymore,
Yeah.
but I still fly it, just the newer one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hey, that's the risk when you're diving mountains and you're doing crazy stuff, right? You're
Yeah.
bound to crash. Uh, it's only a matter of time, right?
Right.
Especially if you're pushing the boundaries and you're pushing yourself and staying within the limits, of course, but
Yeah.
and being safe. But that's the goal is to push it and get some new awesome
Yeah.
stuff in some
Yeah.
ways, right?
It's just
Um,
FPV.
yep.
That's the whole thing of it. Like it's only cool if you get close, and sometimes you get too close.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, and that might be still an amazing shot, but you
Right.
never know until you try.
Some of my most watched reels are crashing. So
Yeah.
if
I
it
did have some I did have someone tell me that too, is like the one that like crashed into the water was like that was one that just blew up for some reason. It's like people love fail videos. Unfortunately, it's like, the world we live in of like people want to see other people fail, unfortunately. But in this case, we don't want to see us fail. We want to see us succeed and push through, which, you have, but it is still kind of fun to see crashes on FPV stuff, right?
yeah, I mean like it'll it's either like a good shot or it's a good Instagram reel.
Yep. Hey, there you go. It's still always use it. Yeah, so I guess to kind of transition out of like, all right, you kind of upgrading your gear, you kind of went full time in it. You're rocking and rolling. I think in the beginning, if I remember correctly, like you were doing a lot of like you're trying to do some travel stuff, right? And like work with resorts and still maybe doing some website stuff and social and whatnot. Is that an industry you just were like, hey, I really want to do this because like I want to travel and I want to like experience this stuff? And because I mean, I still do that today. I do that all the time on all of our trips. I'll reach out to people and try to get work, right? To make it worth your while and also get some awesome footage for people. But is that like where you went right away, or like what was your thoughts of, all right, if I'm gonna do this full time, what industry am I gonna tap into and who am I gonna sell my services to?
Yeah, it's a great question. Travel is definitely the industry that sparked my interest in the video at the beginning, anyways. Um, and like for instance, it's taken me to South Africa, Belize, the Dominican Republic, Indonesia, and so it's taken me to some really cool places. And
Yeah.
some of those trips have been just content creation and creator retreats where you just go and make dope content, meet cool people, and network. And you might land a collaboration or a job along the way with a resort. Um, and so it's definitely possible. I landed a big gig in the Dominican Republic. FPV was a big aspect of it. Um, but they're like I also did stuff in video for their website outside of FPV. So it's a really great tool to have if you're if you have other skills along with it, even design. But like FPV specifically, what really got me excited was my biggest client is Mercury Racing, and most of, if you've seen my page, you've definitely seen the content I produce for them. It's just high speed boats, you know.
Yep.
And for their like marketing material and product launches and social media, they have like FPV is just the best way to showcase a boat like that, you know.
For sure.
So yeah, that's definitely there's a lot of ways to make money in FPV. And that's just kind of the niche that I fell into was the marine industry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hey, yeah, you can't chase someone down with like a camera and a jib and all the other stuff. I mean, you can. People have done it for a long time, but if you have an FPV at your arsenal, right? Obviously, you want to use that, and it's just a cool way to get some very unique shots, and kind of go that way. Throughout your time being, that full-time FPV pilot now, like, have you had, and I don't want to single anyone out of your clients or anything like that, but give me like a top three. Like, what are your top three like favorite? Either I'll let you choose. Either top three specific shots or like top three favorite places that you've ever flown.
That's a great question.
Stump them. Come on.
Top top three, honestly, and this is the first one I would say is Kalinking Beach in Bali. Um, and you might not know the name, but like you know the shot if you've seen it. Like a lot of FPV pilots have flown there. Um, but it was just like on the bucket list, like one of those shots that I saw at the very, very beginning that I was like, damn, this FPV thing is crazy.
Mhm.
Um, and when I got there, I was like, I want to fly a similar line. I don't want to fly the exact same one. And so I did a little spin on it myself and hit this gnarly gap. And that was a peak moment right there. Um, Another one, damn, this is hard.
Right? It's hard
Um,
to narrow them down, right?
yeah,
It's a difficult thing to do.
but I would say second, I didn't know F1 boats were a thing, but I was able to go out to Lake X, which is the testing lake for all of Mercury Racing's motors, and it was one of my first gigs with them, and we got some really dope footage of like flying through this iconic Lake X tower, and I was just flying through it and catching up with the F1 boat, and it's in my show reel that I still show today just because I love it so much. And um yeah, that was definitely like top shoe as well.
Nice.
um I might have to come back to you on number
That's
three.
fine. I'll take 2. I'll take 2. I was gonna ask for 1, but I didn't wanna single any shot out and, make them feel not loved. But, no, if you haven't seen, obviously, the shot in Belize, go check it out. We'll link it, in the show notes and stuff as well because it's a sick shot for sure. I wanna transition this a little bit, into your new course because this is kind of, it's all kinda come together throughout these last really 4 years, right? A little over 4 years for you since you've kinda started, flying, right? So, where did this course come from? Like, what was the inspiration behind it? What made you be like, all right, I want to create a course for FPV pilots and specifically cinematic, right? Your course is very designed for that individual that either wants to create cinematic FPV content. Maybe they're just starting out. Maybe they want to take it to the next level. But like,
Mm.
what was your inspiration and like mindset behind, all right, I'm gonna do this?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a lot behind this question, truthfully. When I- when I was working with Landon, by the way, and he was like my idol because I was a full-time filmmaker student, and then all of a sudden I'm working with him during that era, and when my following was growing, I was like, I could really like teach FPV, like it's from my video knowledge to like my my whole endeavor of learning FPV. I felt like I was pretty confident. And literally when I was like, I'm gonna make an FPV course, that month I crashed like 5 times. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah.
I'm
It's
like,
like, you
maybe I'm
got
not.
this a little bit.
And so I actually put a pause on it and stopped writing the curriculum and everything. And as it like, as I kept on learning more and as I got more jobs and got more confident in it, I was like, I, again, I still felt like I could and I want to, because um, I won't go into all of the history of my past, but I do love teaching. I've had a few years of experience with teaching and even like a youth camp counselor. I did 2 years for my church way back in the day, just teaching people. And so it's a really core belief of mine to just share knowledge. Um,
Love it.
and yeah, thank you. And in FPV, it's a very hobbyist industry. And so there's a lot of talk about the components and the different, KV on the motors and just like all of these technical things that I honestly didn't care too much about. I just wanted to create the videos. And so I bought like 2 courses of FPV. I binged YouTube, and all of it had a disconnect there for me. And so I felt like I had something in the market to offer that's outside of the hobbyist side of the FPV industry and help it like transition into a cinematic side of things. Um, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, hey, that you summed it up, right? I mean, there is a lot out there in a lot of different ways, whether it's actual physically building it or,
Right.
getting into obviously the more down and dirty of, how to tune and, what type of drones to build and what you're using it for. But like, I think going back to what I had mentioned even earlier, it's like creating cinematic content and then also creating a business and doing it, you've learned a lot, right? So
Yeah.
kind of putting that all into something that people can digest, and putting into a course, I think is great, right? There's a lot of ways for people then to connect with you a little bit more too, and
Yeah.
uh, hopefully a little bit different spin on the way they can learn how to do that as well. Do you want to give us like a little tease of like what's I know it's coming out here next week, right? So it's like,
Yep.
can you give us dates? Like when is it coming out? Can people expect it? Like maybe a little sneak peek of like what can they expect inside of the course and
Yeah.
um where they can find it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So the past month, I've actually had 10 people in it. I've had 10 beta testers. So they've been going through the course. They've all had amazing things to say about it, which I've shared on my Instagram. And they've also given me really good feedback. So it's just been this phase of trying to make it the best possible course. And the thing about FPV is you're always going to be learning and you're always going to be asking questions. There's always things coming up. And so there will always be content that I will add into the course. But so the course is called Called to Fly. Again, again, focused on the cinematic side of FPV. Basically taking people all the way from the simulator. And something I've expanded on is how to practice in the simulator, even like how to get cinematic shots in the sim, because a lot of these courses and YouTube videos are just like, get in the simulator and fly, like put the hours in, and you're just like, okay, but like, what does that mean,
Mhm.
and so I've really tried to hone in this practice to performance of FPV, and just like always having this final edit in mind when you're flying, because FPV can be a very for people who don't know what it is, it can be very disorienting and make them nauseous. But if it's used in the right way, it can make this super dynamic shot that makes people just like open their mouth and be like how did they get that shot, And so it's just the whole step by step process of the first step of in the simulator to your first flight in the field to GoPro settings and capturing that footage, editing it, color grading, sound design, working with even your company, DroneAdair, to market that, portfolio and to either make it a hobby, a another tool in your filmmaking toolkit, or to potentially go full time in FPV. So yeah,
Love it.
there's right now, and I'm even adding stuff next this. I'm even adding stuff now, but it's 30 modules and 4+ hours of footage. And again, that's going to change every single week. So,
Yeah.
but
That's great. I mean, I think that's too just a great value add, right? It's like people knowing like, hey, there's always gonna be more content. There's always gonna be stuff
yeah,
that you're learning that you want to pass off to people that are either enrolled in the course or like continuing building that value for new people that come into the course as well. The reason why I love it too is it is for all people that want to be in
yeah,
FPV. It doesn't matter if you're a hobbyist or going into it full time and or it's like, hey, you're a production studio and you have a pilot on staff and you want to like take their stuff to the next level, whatever it is,
right,
right? It's like there's something for everyone in it, and you can kind of grasp that from just from our conversations and what I
yeah.
know about it. But I think that it should be a amazing course for sure. So
Thank you.
where can people grab it when it's out next week, and when does it release?
Yep. So November 18th to the 22nd, this will be our launch week. So Monday to Friday, there will be exclusive bonuses to that week, and it's going to be the cheapest price available. I won't say the price because that might change, but it's even going to be cheaper than Black Friday or throughout any other sale. I just want to make this very exclusive and people jumping into it now. Um, but yeah, so the
Love it.
18th is when they can jump in. Calledtofly.co is the website, or just on my Instagram, Trevor Call FPV. And I'm going to be talking about it a lot, so it should be easy to find there.
Sweet. Yeah. So anybody that's listening right now, today is Friday. If you're listening to it on today, which is when the podcast release, the 15th, it comes out on Monday, so only 3 days away, on the 18th. So if you want some amazing discounts, we have some links as well in the show notes here for you guys. The link to the website, some other links in here for some of the videos that Trevor's done, his website, anything else that you want. Feel free to reach out as well if we're missing anything. If you have any questions for us or Trevor, I'm excited to get in there myself at some point, play around, check it out, go through it. I'm a I've flown FPV. I can crash with the best of them and still also fly very well, but I need some honing in on my cinematic FPV too. So I'm excited to jump in it. Yeah, Trevor. I mean, anything else that you want to kind of go through to here today? If not, let people know where they can find you and reach out to you, and leave us with anything else about your story or anything you have.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Before moving on too much further, I wanted to say that if you are a part of DroneAdair, that you do get an additional discount during that launch week, and that will be fine. That will be found within your program. So
Yeah,
check that out there. And excited to get you in as well. Um, but yeah, I'll link my show reel below this. I think it's a good representation of just storytelling involved with FPV. I think that's the biggest key is you can get up in the air in the simulator or in real life and fly, but as far as like capturing a video that you're proud of, that's what we're here for. Like I want to make sure that everyone can travel anywhere in the world and be confident to fly no matter what and capture a cinematic shot that they're stoked on and that they can post and that they can market themselves as, and basically just live a life of creativity and stoke. And like I've never would have guessed that FPV would have taken me to all those countries, and that my life would have looked this way. So like it was all from a decision 5 years ago to join full-time filmmaker, and now I'm here, So you never know where life is going to take you, and that's why the title of it is called The Fly, because I felt that, and I felt like it was something for me, and I wanted to jump in before it was too late. You know, life is
Hey,
short.
great marketing there with the last name call, and you made it right. It was your calling, and hey, it took me so long to think of DroneAdair, and even well, Map was the first one I thought of, but like that, it's great, right? It sticks. People remember it. They'll think of you. It's
Hope
perfect.
so.
I love it, man. It's great.
Thanks,
It's
man.
kind of funny too. I actually took a couple courses of a full-time filmmaker back in the day too, when I was just starting, because I just started in full video, but kind of transitioned to drones. So
Yeah.
courses are great. That's what we love, right? Is like another way to learn, another way to get out there, and
Yep.
learn new skills and put yourself into a position of uncomfortability, learning something that you're not used
Yep.
to, and testing yourself, because you said before you only live once, and life is short. So go out there, learn a
Yeah.
new skill, have some fun, and capture some
Exactly.
sick moments, right?
Yep.
um,
There's too much to learn in this world, and there's too much information easily accessible to us. So it's a good time to be alive, man.
yeah, no doubt. Well, I appreciate you being on here today with me,
Of
Trevor.
course. Thanks
um,
for having me.
Absolutely. We'll link everything like I mentioned, um, in the show notes. Everybody, thank you for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Legacy Liftoff podcast, and safe flying.